Hey, hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the Middle East Forum's weekly podcast series. My name is Ahnaf Kalam, and I will be moderating today's discussion. We are pleased to be joined by Noam Raydan, who is a senior fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, and whose work has appeared in the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, the Financial Times, and a number of other publications. Ms. Raydan will speak for 15 minutes, followed by 15 minutes of Q&A from the audience. If you would like to ask a question, you can do so by using the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen to type your question. And with that, I will turn the discussion over to Noam Raydan. Noam, the floor is yours. The floor is yours, excuse me.
Thank you, Anaf. Thank you very much for having me here. So my name is Noam Raydan, and nowadays I focus on the maritime risks in the Red Sea, and by that I mean the Houthi attacks. At the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, we have been tracking all the maritime attacks since November 2023 up until now. And I will be sharing with you shortly a map which will show you all the attacks since 2023 and even also attacks which go back to 2019, because our work on maritime risks in the Middle East did not only start with the Houthi attacks, but it covers actually a period starting from 2019 up until now. I'm going to start sharing my screen right now to explain to you our work, what has been going on, and what are the implications of the Houthi maritime attacks that are being linked by the Yemeni group to what's happening in Gaza between Hamas and Israel. I will actually start by sharing our map. What you see on the screen is the Washington Institute's maritime attacks in the Middle East since 2019. I will be focusing on the attacks that have been taking place since November, as I said. As you can see here, since November 2023, we've had over or close to 200 incidents in the Southern Red Sea, specifically here, and also in Gulf of Aden. And recently, we have been seeing, as some people know, an expansion to the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean. In addition to tracking commercial ships, we also track warships. By that, we mean warships that are affiliated with the US Navy and also with the European forces that are there on a defensive mission, which is called EU NAVFOR aspects. We also track everything or most of the incidents that involve interceptions of US weapons by US CENTCOM and coalition forces, as you can see here. For those people who are interested, I very much encourage you to check our map if you aren't tracking the Houthi attacks on a daily basis, because it would show you a huge increase since November 2023 up until now. From my map, I'm going to move to discussing what happened actually this week. I'm going to start. What you see here is actually a screenshot from a documentary that was released yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, by a TV station called Al Mayadeen, and it is about the operation against the Galaxy Leader car carrier. And this is the first ship which the Houthis hijacked specifically on November 19, 2023. In the documentary, we saw how the Houthis actually stormed the ship. For instance, here in this photo, you can see an armed man with a weapon, and the people here, as you can see the cursor, I hope you can see the cursor, you can see the seafarers just sitting there. And from the footage that I saw, they looked very surprised, and no one knew what was happening. It was an attack no one anticipated. And here I want to focus a little bit on the propaganda or information war from the documentary that was released. The Houthis tried to portray, not portray, they shared some misinformation about how the shipping industry worked. They called some ships that are actually controlled by intelligence forces, which is actually inaccurate. They blamed some ships, Israeli ships, of switching flags, claiming that this is done by intelligent forces. As you can see here on this screenshot, here a person claims that the Israeli intelligence forces are actually involved in playing or manipulating the ownership of some vessels, which is inaccurate. Their documentary was powerful when it comes, to their media campaign, but it was, as I said, full of inaccuracies. Because here's how the maritime campaign evolved. First of all, they started attacking. And here, let me just stop sharing to explain a few things. First, they started attacking ships linked to Israel, and this is true, specifically in November and December. And then in January, when the US and the UK started the strikes inside Yemen, they started focusing on ships with links to either the US and the UK. However, during all those attacks since November until February, there were attacks against ships that were very unclear. We did not know, were they actually targeting them because they were Israeli, or were they targeting them because of US and UK links? Now, the Houthis have been trying to show that they know how the shipping industry works, and this is inaccurate. I say this as a person who closely covers certain developments in the shipping industry. Specifically, recently, I've been focusing on how they look at ownership. A ship can change hands probably like every month and every year. The Houthis do not take that into consideration. For instance, there was a ship called Rubimar. It sank in March after they hit it in February. That ship was actually linked to a company sitting in Lebanon, where actually Hezbollah is fighting Israel. But the Houthis looked at all data, which showed that the ship at one had an office in the UK. But this was not I would call it a legit address. The ship was actually linked to ownership sitting in Lebanon, and still they hit the ship. Another example, which now I'm gonna show it to you, is a ship that was actually going to Iran. Lax was hit in May, and they hit it multiple times using anti-ship ballistic missiles. They actually used at least 5 ASBMs, anti-ship ballistic missiles, against the ship, which was hit on the port site, as you can see here. And this photo is from the French armed forces. And also they hit a cargo hold. This ship was going to Iran, and yet they also hit it. Why? Because it is linked to a Greek company that has ships that trade with Israel. Now, the Houthis have divided their maritime campaign into 5 phases. During phase 4, they said, we're not only going to hit ships that have links to the US, UK, and Israel, but also we're going to start hitting any company that has ships visiting Israeli ports. And this ship Lax, which you can see on the screen, is owned by a Greek company that happens to have ships trading with Israel. But here's the problem. Even if this ship Lax is owned by a Greek company that trades with Israel, this Greek company also trades with Iran. So this is a very curious case. And I'm going to show you how this ship Lax, after it was attacked, it continued, by the way, sailing. This did not impede, the attack did not impede its journey. And it actually ended in Bandar Khomeini, as you can see here on the screen. And this is from maritime traffic. To those who are not familiar with maritime traffic, we use in order to track ship. As you can see, Lax is now in Iran. And this is the ship which the Houthis, as you can see, they hit it towards the end of May in the southern Red Sea. The reason why I'm focusing on these attacks is to show you that while they were effective in preventing ships linked to Israel, and even the UK and the US, they have also been attacking ships that actually trade with countries in the region, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and even ships that go for that are moving from Asia, for instance, and going to Lebanon. My point here is that what the Houthis are doing do not only affect US, UK, Western powers, it also affects countries in the region. And I'm going to just show you a couple of examples with a focus on Iraq and Qatar to show you how what they're doing also affects, as I said, Arab countries, and why it cannot be ignored. This problem cannot be ignored by regional countries. Let me pull up my screen again. Go back to my slides, and I'm gonna move to Qatar. Qatar, for those who do not know, is one of the world's top LNG exporters. Here, I want you please to focus on January 2024. The exports you see here are by routes, and these are Qatar's export to Europe. Before January 2024, they were all taking the Suez Canal to reach Europe. And after December, especially January, when the attacks started increasing exponentially, we started seeing most all of them avoiding the Suez Canal and going around the Cape of Good Hope to reach Europe. Of course, this is a very long journey, and because of all those diversions around the Cape of Good Hope, we started seeing freight rates increasing. So this is Qatar. Qatar has also ambitions for the future in order to increase its LNG output. We're talking about 85% expansion. And Qatar is trying also to lock in demand in Europe by signing contracts with some European countries that want to import more LNG from Qatar in the future. The question here, if this is going to happen, increase more exports to Europe, Qatar is gonna definitely face a problem if the Red Sea crisis is not resolved and the Houthi threat continues growing, because you need stability in the southern Red Sea for the shipping, for trade, and also for all the economic ambitions of some Arab countries there, specifically also Saudi Arabia, which I tackled in my recent work for the Washington Institute. Moving to Iraq. The reason why I also focus on Iraq is because we also know that there are armed groups there that are cooperating with the Houthis, and also to attack Israel. I'm not talking here about the Iraqi government. Let me be very clear. You do have armed groups that operate on their own. Now you see here Iraq's crude exports to Europe. Again, same, just like Qatar. Before January, they all took the Suez Canal to get to Europe. Post December 2023, again, when the attacks started increasing, a lot of ships that are bought by refiners in Europe, or tankers, I mean here, they started taking also the Cape of Good Hope. Some of them, of course, continued to go through the Suez Canal. In addition to Qatar and Iraq, I want to mention that recently, and this will be covered in our upcoming work, we started seeing the Houthis also attacking all tankers carrying Russian oil. The last two attacks were actually against tankers carrying Russian oil going to Asia, specifically China and India, which are top buyers of Russian oil. And after those attacks, we did see some tankers operated by a Greek company avoiding also the southern Red Sea. My point here is that those attacks are now increasing in complexity. Although the Houthis, they want to prevent any company that trades with Israel to go through the southern Red Sea and Gulf of Aden, they're also actually affecting the interests of regional countries, and also countries, for instance, like China and Russia. Of course, they're also not happy with what's happening in the Red Sea, because the Red Sea is a very important shipping lanes for all countries, most countries around the world, especially those that rely on it to get their oil and other commodities, as I showed you, gas and oil. I tried to show oil and gas and talk about different commodities like bulk carriers, because again, this is a shipping lane that is important for different types of commodities. And now I think I have 2 more minutes. The Houthis right now are in the 5th phase. So remember, I told you they divided the maritime campaign into 5 phases. Now we are in the 5th phase. The 5th phase came out after the Houthis attacked Tel Aviv using a drone. They called it "quote unquote" Yafa, and they have vowed to retaliate or respond to Israel's attack on Hodeidah, which again was in response to the Houthi attack on Tel Aviv. And during phase 5, we definitely might see an escalation. It could be, we could see Houthis attacking, again, Israel, trying to attack Israel, again, probably in coordination with Iraqi armed groups. Or they can only focusing on Israel to the north, or they can also escalate on both fronts, meeting the Red Sea, Gulf of Aden, and also by attacking Israel. So we are still waiting to see how their 5th phase will turn out to be. But for now, the situation in the Red Sea remains very unstable. Instability is not good for any country that wants to expand its maritime industry in the region. I did mention Qatar, for instance, and Iraq, and how they have been affected also by the disruption to maritime traffic, but also Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia requires stability in the Red Sea because in its vision 2030 strategy, the kingdom focuses on its maritime industry, focuses on how it wants to increase the competitiveness of its ports, especially Jeddah and King Abdullah port, which are Red Sea ports. If the situation remains unstable in the Red Sea, as I said, it won't be good for regional countries. And it remains to be seen how regional countries, including the ones I've just mentioned, will react if the situation continues to escalate in the region. So I'll leave it there, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you. That was an excellent presentation. I'll start with something you kind of touched on earlier in your presentation with regards to Russia. As you pointed out, there's a recent report that states that the Houthis have attacked more merchant ships hauling Russian commodities than products from anywhere else in the world. How do you think Moscow will respond to this, and how might it affect Russia's relationship with Iran?
This is a very good question. Now, I'm going to rely on the data I have, and I don't want to blow things out of proportion. Before the latest two attacks on Chios Lion and Bentley One. So these two tankers are operated by a Greek company, and this Greek company happens to trade Russian oil. So the attacks were not against Russian tankers. They were not against tankers flying the Russian flag. We have not seen Houthis attacking Russian tankers. We've seen them attacking ships operated by, let's say, Greek companies carrying Russian oil. Why? Because those companies happen to trade with Israel. So I would not say that the Houthis are targeting Russia specifically here. No, they're not. They're targeting the owner of the ship that is carrying Russian oil because the owner trades with Israel. So we need to be careful here. Previous attacks against ships carrying tankers, oil tankers specifically carrying Russian oil, some of them were based on inaccurate or outdated information. And I mentioned this at the beginning, right? How the Houthis look at ownership. But even, let's say, if an ownership changed last month, sometimes it's not reflected in the database. Let's say my ship is right now I'm British and I own the ship, but it changed hands and you own the ship. So the database will not reflect that immediately, but the Houthis will look at it and say, oh, this is actually UK, and they would not take into consideration the change in ownership. So how will Russia respond? I would not. Russia is not looking at it as an attack on Russia. Again, they're looking at it as an attack on ships owned by companies that trade with Israel. So, and again, the attacks are not a lot, but still significant. So, yeah.
All right, thank you. Now, there's an article from earlier today in the French magazine Le Monde suggesting that the American and European forces in the Red Sea have largely failed to deter the Houthis from continuing their operations. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is a question that is asked all the time. So we need to repeat this all the time. What we're dealing with, whether us, the analysts, the researchers, or the military people is really something new. It's unconventional, right? And I believe everyone is learning from what's happening there. We cannot say they haven't been doing anything. They've been trying also to protect commercial ships. Let's be clear about that. The Houthis, because they've been super powerful and effective, and I have to say that, I say it as a researcher and as analyst, that I do my best to look at them unbiased eyes. They have been very powerful with their media campaign. And a lot of people tend to believe, whatever they say about the Houthis. They've been very powerful. They've been able to project the image that we're very powerful. They even claim that they actually forced, according to them, the Eisenhower aircraft carrier to leave the Red Sea. But we know, of course, this is not because of that. The aircraft carrier had been there for months, and it had to return back home. So they continue to strike even launchers inside Yemen, missile launchers. They prevent them also from launching UAVs. I mean, by that, the unmanned aerial vehicles. They try also they've been doing a lot of operation against USVs. I want to mention USVs. By USV, I'm talking about sea drones. Also, we've seen CENTCOM destroying more sea drones recently. The Houthis have been using sea drones in order to severely damage ships. And we recently saw that. And we're noticing an uptick. And I say an uptick, this is a huge increase in the use of USVs. So the presence of such forces there, not only Americans, also Europeans, to also escort commercial ships is still very important. So so I'll leave it there. It's not they failed, but again, we're dealing with something that is new, and everyone is learning lessons about how to deal with it in the future because it will continue evolving.
Now, to follow up, you just mentioned the Houthis' use of UAVs and USVs. How does the Houthis' military capabilities compare to the other Iranian proxies in Hamas and Hezbollah?
Okay. On this, I will share with you what I know. Again, I'm not talking here about a military expert. But based on the data that we see, that we collect, both the Houthis have been using combination of weapons. At the beginning, we saw them using UAVs and ASBMs, the anti-ship ballistic missiles, and also cruise missiles. They started using USV a little bit. I would say we saw 2 incidents in January, February, but the focus was not on those. They were more using ASBMs and the cruise missiles and the UAVs. And recently they started using more USVs. When it comes to the Iraqi armed groups, also in June, are we in July? In July and June, they started launching or claiming to launch a lot of attacks, drone attacks against infrastructure in Israel. And they claim those were effective, but again, we believe that they did actually launch them, but they did not hit the targets. So both of them are focusing, I would say, the Iraqi armed groups more on drones, missiles, but the Houthis are using more. They're using USVs. Why? Obviously, because they can use the sea drone. They have access to vital shipping lanes. We're talking about the Southern Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. And now they're, as I said, they've actually expanded. They can reach some parts in Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean. We saw 2 incidents there, by the way, against 2 MSC ships. MSC is a Switzerland-based company, which actually the Houthis refer to and inaccurately as an Israeli ship because it trades with Israel.
Okay, thank you. Now, more broadly speaking, can you speak to the global economic impact of the Houthi attacks in the Red Sea?
Sure. The global economic impact, we've been covering it since the beginning. In this presentation, I wanted to focus more also on the regional impact because this is very important and undercovered. With respect to the global impact, we've seen also Maersk. Maersk is one of the companies that continue to draw attention to the disruption in the container ship market because of the longer journeys that ships are required to take. However, let's be clear: a lot of ship owners have been making profits out of this, and this is not a surprise because of the higher freight rates. So you have groups that are making profit and groups that are actually feeling, feeling the pressure. And in the end, as we know, that the consumers, if this crisis continues, let's say 2, 3 years, hopefully not, it's going to be a big problem because the Red Sea is required, for shorter journeys and also for reasons related to lower costs. But for now, freight rates remain high, and by the freight rates, I'm referring to the higher cost because of the longer journey. More fuel now is required to do all that journey around the Cape of Good Hope, which requires you, probably extra 2 weeks instead of the shorter journey through the Suez Canal. Europe, for instance, relies a lot on imports from Asia, and of course, this Europe has been impacted by the longer journeys ships are taking. And on top of that, we also, as I mentioned, the regional impact is very clear. Although we're not hearing a lot of Arab countries talking about it, but it's there. And as I said, it will definitely impact their economic plans for the future if the Red Sea crisis continues. The Red Sea, I want to also note something. The Red Sea itself is supposed to connect continents. What the Houthis managed to do is disconnect continents. And this is very important to know. So this is a symbol. This is a symbol of the Red Sea connection, and what the Houthis managed to do with disruption. So if this continues in the future, definitely the economic impact is going to be higher. And I think I mentioned the consumers. In the end, all the costs are going to be passed on to consumers. But for now, we're not seeing. We've kind of like seen the situation stabilizing. Okay, but again, we should not normalize it. Now it has stabilized, meaning we're not seeing more disruption, even in the transit of ships in the Red Sea. We're still seeing lower transits. And quickly, I'm gonna just share with you. I forgot to share it. Look at this one. This we're seeing lower transit. This is the Red Sea transit. I forgot. But again, it has stabilized, meaning we're not seeing the sharp decrease that we started seeing December moving forward. And the same thing with BAM, with Bab el-Mandeb. So we're seeing lower transits in Bab el-Mandeb and Red Sea, but we're not seeing, again, further slide in the transit. So it's kind of stabilized. I would say the drop has stabilized. So this is something to know. Should it be normalized? Absolutely not. So I hope my answer is clear.
All right, thank you. Now, we have a question from Robert Larrick, who asks, how does the lessened trade and commerce in the Red Sea hurt China and their economy?
Okay. I don't have a lot I don't have a long answer to that. I would only say that based on my observations, I haven't seen China flagged ships being affected. They are still operating in the region. Also, you have Chinese operators that are some of what we call the opportunistic players that are actually taking advantage of the Red Sea. They can operate there. They exist. Of course, once in a while, we do see, like what happened recently, a ship carrying vegetable oil to China ended up being attacked. But this does not mean that the whole trade between Russia and China has been disrupted. So we will see some incidents once in a while. But of course, also China wants to see stability in the southern Red Sea. But as long as their own interests are not being attacked, I think they're fine with it. We hear them once in a while making statements, but we don't see them intervening at all. You know, if a ship requires assistance after being attacked. So that's my answer on China.
All right, now we've got a few minutes left here. One thing I did want to ask about is how do you see U.S. policy towards the Houthis shifting in what may be a Kamala Harris presidency or what may be a Donald Trump presidency?
Hi, that's not a question. Look, it's not a question I have an answer to right now, or a question I can answer. All I can say is that what's going to happen in the Red Sea, and the response of Western powers to the Red Sea will also depend on what's going to happen in Gaza. It's true that the Houthis linked the Red Sea crisis to the Gaza conflict, but we all know that this might actually expand in the future, even if the Gaza war ended, the Houthis might actually use, that threat for different political agendas in the future. Who knows? But what happens in the Red Sea will definitely be linked to also what happens in Gaza. So it's very difficult to say, very difficult. All those fronts are linked together, even the front in southern Lebanon. So we need to look at the bigger conflict, wait to see how things will develop, and hope if they develop. Yeah.
Right, understood. Now I think that's about as much time as we have here for our podcast for this week. I want to thank you again for taking the time to give us that fantastic presentation.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Of course. Oh, it was a pleasure on our end as well. Now, is there anywhere where our viewers and listeners can go if they'd like to follow more of your work?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. So I did share the screen earlier. They can visit the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. they can check our map, which is on the main homepage. And also we have, recently we published Maritime Spotlight. Maritime Spotlight is a platform where we share trends we see related to maritime risks in the region. We publish them there along with my colleague Farzin Nadimi. We both of us are the co-creators of this map and also Maritime Spotlight. So people who are interested in seeing more trends they don't see in the media or elsewhere, they can also visit Maritime Spotlight. Those who are interested in the recent attacks on tankers carrying Russian oil can actually keep an eye on Maritime Spotlight because we will have a post coming up soon.
All right, thank you. And for those of you who will be watching this recording on our YouTube channel, I'll be sure to put a link to the Washington Institute for Near East Policy and to these maps in the description of this video. But for our viewers and listeners, we thank you again for joining us and participating today. Please join us this coming Monday for a podcast with Michelle Gerfinkiel. With that, I want to thank you all again, and I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. Thanks.